Hello today. For those of you out there in Radio Land, Lou Porter, this is for your information. And please don't touch that dial. This is a very special program today, and we will want you to stay with us. The phone lines will be open. You can reach us here at 319-234-1441. Special guest today is Alicia Jefferson. A child with parents in prison will be the conversation, but it is so much more than a conversation. Alicia is calling for people to come forward to help save the children, especially those children whose parents are in prison, as her mother was when she was a child. I want to welcome you, Alicia, and congratulations at the same time. I don't know where you got the strength for this, but you got it done. And I hope that it will help a lot of people, the conversation that we will have today, and in other ways, that you know from a personal standpoint what has happened because you've lived it. So, again, welcome.
Thank you for having me, Mrs. Porter. Thank you so much.
All right. Well, let's just jump right into this. Whatever made you want to write the book?
It was a conversation I had with a woman here in Waterloo, a few years younger than me, who had the same experience as a child. We were talking, and we started just opening up with each other about how our mother was away and what we were going through at home. And when I got home that evening, I just started thinking about developing some sort of program that would cater to the children whose parents are incarcerated now. And as I was working out ideas, brainstorming ideas for a program, I became inspired to tell my story.
Mm-hmm.
So in a sense, I kind of put everything, all my ideas for the program on hold, and just started delving into writing my experience.
Wow.
Because I felt that the children need to know there are adults who live this experience.
Yes.
And the
Yes.
caregivers need to know these are the issues, these are the emotional issues that child is going through.
There are many people involved that you've been able to actually capture so succinct. There's no reason in the world why a person could not purchase this book and read it, share it with other people. You're bound to get something out of it. If you don't, I don't know what kind of person that would be that would not get something from this book. There are teachers involved. Your grandmother, of course, played a big role in this. A brother, a father, and you know what the story is because, as I said, you have lived it. It isn't as if you are trying to get in on someone else's conversation. You have your own life and your own history to tell. So basically, why don't you just lay that on the table, and then we can begin to delve a little deeper.
Now you mentioned the other people involved. For one, grandmothers. For the most part, in the black community, the children end up with the grandmother.
That's right.
For the most part. Of course, foster care comes into play in different situations, but most of the children end up with their grandmothers. And in the book, I talk about living with my grandmother.
Yes.
And I also express how today I understand and am fortunate that my grandmother did take me in.
Yeah.
At the time, though, as an 8, 9, 10, 11-year-old child, I was not happy about it because she was not my mother.
All right.
And that was one source of my anger because everybody looked to her as my mother. So grandmothers, they play a major role, but unfortunately, maybe it's because my grandmother didn't understand the impact of my mother's incarceration on me. So she didn't encourage me or help me to express myself, to express what I was going through. So that, again, was a source of anger. And I had to deal with that. I had to deal with the anger I had towards her for not helping me to cope better.
Okay.
Like I said, as a child, I didn't understand foster care, family stepping in.
All you knew was that your mother was not with you.
Was away.
Yeah.
And there are many grandmothers who are in this experience right now, and unfortunately.
Even as we speak.
That's right.
Mhm.
They don't talk about it. They
No.
don't talk about it in their churches.
No.
They don't talk about it amongst their close friends.
That's right. It's a no-no.
And I don't recall any conversations my grandmother having with her associates.
Mhm.
So I felt, because she didn't talk about it, and she was the closest one to me,
Mhm.
that I wasn't supposed to talk about
All
it.
right. It's
So-
easy to pick that up. Yeah.
Right. So that's somewhat of the grandmother's position, and from the child's standpoint, the feelings towards the grandmother.
Mhm.
You mentioned siblings, my brother. The separation that takes place when a parent goes inside, behind the prison walls or jail walls, there often is a separation that takes place. Now, if that child, like I did, stays within their family, it's a burden. I understand this now as an adult. It's a burden on the family to take care of these children,
Mhm.
feed and clothe, and all of the things that come into play when you're taking care of a child. So oftentimes, they need to divide that burden.
Yes.
So one child is going here,
And
the other
one is
child is
gone.
going there,
Mhm.
just as it was with me and my brother. He
Right.
went to my
But it did
great-grandmother.
keep you out of foster care
It
in some
did,
other
it did,
situations.
it did.
Yes.
It definitely
Mhm.
did keep us out of foster care. But even with foster care, I've since learned that the children who go into foster care, they're often separated.
Oh, wow.
And there's no sibling connection.
Mhm.
And for me, that reinforced my loneliness, my loneliness, my
Yes.
sense of belonging was shattered.
Mhm.
Because my brother was in my life, all of my life, up until my mother's incarceration. Then we were no more, in a sense.
Older, younger?
He's a year older than me.
A year older, okay.
And we slept in the same room, we
Mhm.
played outdoors together every single day until my mother's incarceration. Then our relationship began to dwindle because of our separation. Although we were in the same family together,
Mhm.
it still impacts the connection between siblings.
Mhm.
It's separate.
Okay, all that you have been through, is there any sense that there is a particular organization or maybe a group in our churches or organizations that we love to go to in the afternoon for this, that, or the other, that is growing at all? In other words, we have groups for everything that there is out there. Is there a group that you know of in Waterloo or Iowa, because I don't know any in either? And if there's someone out there that is listening, please make yourself a part of this conversation. If you don't listen to anything else today, make yourself a part of this conversation and let us know what your experiences have been. Because believe me, we all know, including myself, we all know that we have had people in our family to go to prison or to go to jail or to be incarcerated in some way or another. But do we want to say it? In fact, we will deny it almost by not saying it. You're in denial when you don't talk about it. So that is a heavy thing to deal with too. Our number here is 319-234-1441. Should you have a question or an opinion you would like to share with the greater listening audience, please give us a call.
To answer your question about organizations, that I know of in Waterloo, there is no organization that caters to children of incarcerated parents, specifically.
Mm-hmm.
There are a number of remedial groups, there are a number of organizations that are at work here in Waterloo with children whose parents are incarcerated or parent is incarcerated.
Mhm.
However, they don't primarily cater to those issues.
Mhm.
They deal with anger management, school issues.
Right.
However, they don't key in on the reason this child is acting out
Mhm.
or acting in, the withdrawal
Exactly.
and truancy and such, is because a parent has been taken out of their lives.
And how do you explain that? How was it explained to you? Your mother's not there. Your friends had mothers. What's the difference here? I mean, how do you deal with that as a child? And what were the years? How old were you during when your mother was in prison?
My mother was sentenced when I was 8, and she
Okay.
was sentenced to 3 years. She ended up doing 3.5 years. So she began to get out 8. 11, she began to start getting back into the community through a halfway house
Uh-huh.
extension. But we were reunited permanently at 12, when I was 12. My father, however, he was gone when I was in the womb.
Oh, right.
And we were able to have a relationship again by the time I was 9. So you asked the question of related to secrecy, and you mentioned earlier no one's talking about it.
Right.
And I said my grandmother didn't share it with anybody. This is termed the conspiracy of silence.
Mm-hmm.
That's what researchers have termed that. And this conspiracy of silence, it affects the children. It affected me in a severe way because, like I said, I didn't feel that I had permission to talk about my mother being away, or my father. And I might mention my mother more often because she was in my life more than my dad. So, but I was affected by that.
Okay, what is the status of you and your mother's relationship now?
At this present time, well, both of my parents have since passed away for over 18 years or so. They both passed away. And that's a good question because I had to deal with it since their death. I couldn't go back and say, Mom, this is how I was feeling, or Dad, this is how I was feeling, and have them console me and comfort me as an adult, which helps. Yeah. However, I had to go back. You asked in the very beginning, how did I have the strength to write this book? I had to go as an adult back into my childhood and reflect on my experience and come to grips with the pain and cry and all of that in order to move forward.
Right.
So I had to go through a significant period of self-psychoanalysis for myself. And then through that I was able to understand that, okay, it wasn't all their fault.
Right.
My anger towards her subsided. My anger towards my grandmother subsided because it wasn't all their fault. And this goes back to the secrecy. Before we got on the air, you mentioned how you believe the secrecy or the silence is due to not wanting to take responsibility for our actions. And I do believe that plays a key part, accountability, community accountability, the black community's accountability. I believe that plays a key part. However, I believe that the even larger issue related to the secrecy is a lack of understanding of our history. How I was able to let go of the pain and the anger and the hate towards my family was because of my personal reflection. Yes. And it wasn't as if somebody was standing there saying, "Oh, Alicia, let's talk about this," But it was that personal. It was that understanding of our history and my understanding of institutional or structural racism that led my mother down the path she went to end up being incarcerated, and that had my grandmother ashamed because of the stigma related to crime and punishment and imprisonment. It is a stigma in our community, and it shouldn't be. No, it shouldn't be. It's not totally our fault. It's a historical thing, and I think the secrecy would come to an end if we, as the black community, would understand this is a historical situation. This is systematic. Our children, our parents, my parents, they weren't bad people. They weren't criminals. They were just victims of the system for the most part, set in place. But we do have to have some sense of accountability. Like my grandmother, for instance, I think if she would have became aware of our historical situation, she would have took responsibility for helping me to express myself and helping me understand, Alicia, there's no need to be ashamed of this. This is the situation, and that doesn't make you or your mother a bad person. But that doesn't happen, unfortunately.
We are speaking to Alicia Jefferson today. Thank you for coming to be with us. This is a long-standing problem in our community in general, but specifically as it relates to our community. Because, someone came up, it's been years ago, but they would say, if America has a cold, the black community has pneumonia. That's how much of the difference that there is, So we really want to continue this conversation. We're going to take a break right here. We'll be right back. Yeah, that's true. We get a cold, girl, they get a cold. You know how much worse it is for us? Everybody. We have a special person in the studio today coming to you live. You can reach us here at 319-234-1441. Alicia Jefferson, who sat down and wrote not just a book. This is a book coming from her own personal thoughts, the life that she has lived, what had happened in her growing up years, a lot about her grandmother, because her mother was in prison. So we want to continue this conversation because you are hoping, are you not, Alicia, that someone may hear this, that someone else may be willing to come forward. That secrecy thing really is not a secret at all. Because, I mean, it's like trying to hide something that is right in front of you. What it is, we don't want to acknowledge that it is there. Because then it would have to be a different conversation.
That's right.
Than what we're having right now. The conversation would have action attached to it.
Right.
You know, I heard that, let's do this.
Right.
Let's establish
Right.
this because I heard, saw, felt, whatever, you know, there was a connect there. What was connect? I have a family member in prison. That's the connect. But when we don't want to have anything to do with that, then it doesn't happen. And you keep getting one generation or another.
That's right.
3 generations that I'm associated with right now, and on every one of them, there's somebody gone or going. So we have to just be parents enough, even though it might be too late in some cases. I had asked you about your family, and they're all passed away. But we still have to take a certain responsibility, even though it seems so unfair. But we can't move this ship forward if we don't do that, if we don't take some responsibility and talk about this. I don't know how you go, you are available to go to different organizations and so forth to be a speaker, are you not?
I am.
Yeah.
I am. I
Okay.
am hoping that the book will begin the conversation as we have. I'm hoping that the book will make the conversation lasting.
Yeah.
Because like you said, once we start talking about it, we're going to hopefully feel moved to do something.
do
take
something.
true action about this issue. And you were mentioning generations upon generations
Yes.
going behind bars. And that's intergenerational incarceration.
That's right.
And fortunately, I was able to jump over that hurdle and not experience that. However, there are many children of my age, 30 and beyond, and younger, who are ending up behind the bars,
Yes.
behind the walls, just as their parent or parents
Exactly.
did. And they're not beating that odd of intergenerational incarceration. Now, with community accountability, someone said it this way. Here in Waterloo, I was having a conversation with one of the community leaders, and he said the book could be a way of causing healthy guilt. Healthy guilt. And that's my hopes too, that parents would read this book. The parents who are
Absolutely.
inside and recently released would read this book to understand, wow, this is the impact my being locked up had on my child. This is the alienation that comes with it, the shame.
Yes.
The guilt even, feeling like they're
Right, like
bad
like it
or
was
did
your fault.
something wrong. All of the issues the emotional issues that the child deals with, the parent needs to know this. So when they come home, or once they're home, they could try to help that child cope with those feelings, because they're still there.
They're
Once
still
the
there.
parent comes home, they're still there.
Yeah. Well,
But
you can't
they
put
never
it down.
realize it.
Yeah, I can tell you, you can't put this down, and there's no need in us saying that we can't relate to this. We can't relate to it only because we choose not to relate to it. This is in print now, and I think it is somewhat rightful that it should be where people can hear about it, learn about it, talk about it. even if it's only one or two people. You know, we're hoping that this is a beginning for the community, that it will allow them to have their own conversation or join in with those people who have decided it's time to have this conversation.
It's necessary, Mrs.
It
Porter.
is, because we are losing our children left and right. On the table of content here, Alicia, I see just a whole line of things that you have delineated out and to bring more notice to. Wanted to ask you, in your own life, has this, or how has this whole thing affected your family? We're getting to how it affected you personally, but have you been able to keep your, how old is she?
My daughter? 9.
She's 9.
Mm-hmm.
9 years old,
right,
yeah.
Right.
And so she has the great privilege because her mother took responsibility, talking about you, Alicia,
Right.
and she has a mother that she can go to, and you can talk about these things, where you did not. That was totally absent.
We had that conversation too, me and my daughter. She'll ask me, did you do such and such when you were my age, or did your mother such? And I have to go back and say, well, you know, your grandmother, she was away at this time, and I was with your great-grandmother, and so, you know, there are experiences that
But you see,
has,
she's interested.
And I'm open
Yeah, that's the main
to
thing.
talk about it.
Yeah. And then there is, you know, grandmothers, we laud them and we should, we respect them, we love them. If it wasn't for our grandmothers, many of us wouldn't even have survived. I mean, you would be already in your grave, and if not physically in your grave, certainly benefacted grandmothers dealing with, you were talking about guilt. I mean, now here I am, the grandmother, I'm helping you out, so to speak. This is your child. Now I've got to change my whole life in order to keep this child from harm's way and that whole thing. And on top of that, I got to feel guilty about it. You know, I mean, it just should not have to work that way. But whatever the connection was, I know that grandmothers have saved many a child. Maybe they may not be as healthy mentally or physically as they should be, but if it hadn't been for grandma, you ain't seen nothing yet.
And this is true, and I had my elder aunt kind of make that point also about how me and some of my cousins, without my grandmother, you know, wouldn't have had a chance. And I know that's true today from an adult standpoint. But from the child standpoint, Mrs. Porter, we don't understand the total
Not even in
picture.
England.
We can't see the big picture.
Yeah.
We just see our lives, like you say, disrupted. And now we're with our grandmother. Love my grandmother.
Yeah.
I had a good relationship, somewhat, you know. It was better as I got older, but in that experience, for me, it wasn't fun because, again, she was not my mother. And everybody regarded her that way.
Okay.
But,
well, in this table of contents, it's quite lengthy, so I know you know it better than I, and I've looked at it a couple of times. Is there any certain line that stands out for you when you were putting this together? Was it more about, did it make you feel more about your mother or some other family member or society in general for their failure, who children find themselves in? Even as we speak, there are children on their way to prison.
That's right. Children.
Yeah,
the
children
of
the children
those who
exactly.
And that intergenerational incarceration. You know what? There's the line, and we talk about the secrecy again. And in one of the sections or chapters is titled "No One Talks About My Mother."
Yes.
Now,
yes.
you know, in the black community, now this is ambiguity. In the black community, say you better not talk about my mother. Don't nobody talk about my mother.
That's right.
Now,
you know it.
It's a play on words in a sense. No one talks about my mother.
Yeah,
And
in
the
a way
truth
that
of
can
that,
be helpful.
It was the secrecy.
Yeah.
That is what, you know, hurts us, the child of the parent in prison or jail, hurts us the most. The secrecy, because of that secrecy, we have to hold all these emotional issues inside. You know, I was only able to express myself, and of course it was an abnormal expression in school, because the teacher couldn't do anything to me.
Right.
She couldn't grab the switch and you know,
And I
silence
noticed
me.
you didn't like policemen either.
And that was another issue. And see, this book, I believe, again, will be a resource, could be a resource for teachers, counselors, caregivers, and all, for the teachers and the counselors. in school, as I talk about in the book, there's what they call Officer Friendly Day. I don't know if they still have it, but schools and offices have close connections. If a teacher or a counselor gets hold of this, they will understand the emotional situation of the child in that classroom whose parent is incarcerated and how they might feel towards that officer. And then the withdrawal that they see, they could better address it because they know this child is coming from this experience.
Exactly.
So this officer is not necessarily officer friendly to them because that officer took part in taking their parent away. So
Exactly. Yeah.
that's what I talk about in there.
Well, as we said, we are your hope for this, and if you will express it again, we have about a minute and a half left.
Okay.
You have a particular something that you want to see come from this, and so give how you can be reached if that's possible, and is this the doorway that can be opened right here in our city, because it is needed?
Definitely. Again, Alicia Jefferson is my name, and I can be reached via email at Alicia Jefferson, ALICIA Jefferson, JEFFERSON, at outlook.com. I'm open to speaking about this issue, sharing my book and the information that I share in the book to help caregivers, counselors, teachers, parents, and the children going through this or have gone through it better cope with what emotional, psychological issues are tied to it. So Alicia Jefferson at outlook.com, I can be reached at, or by phone,
Okay.
857-261-1156.
Okay. We want to say thank you. The time went so fast, and I was fascinated. I was so fascinated by this book. I'm a quick reader. I've read it twice already.
And it's a brief read.
Yeah, it's a brief
but
read.
it's
You can
impactful.
get everything that you need from here. You can no longer say, we can no longer say, well, I didn't know that was happening. You know, I'm not saying that everybody who listens today or maybe some other day or may have some conversation at the barbershop or whatever, in church, Sunday school, choir practice, ballet classes, so many things, so many where people gather. Let's get this conversation on and keep it going.
Mrs. Porter, I want to thank you so much for being open to having this conversation on the air.
It's so
and,
needed.
And having me in this
It's
morning.
so needed.
Thank you so much.
And we will be asking you to come again.
I'm open to
Tell
that.
us how you
I'm
feel
open to
about
that.
it. If people call you or you get letters or anything like that, keep them, and we'll make that a part of our next conversation.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much again.
Thank you, Alicia, truly. I do appreciate you being here. Thank you. This is Lou Porter signing off for FYI.